Deep beneath Earth's vast oceans, where sunlight barely penetrated the dark waters, an unusual vessel moved with silent grace. The Wavelord wasn't like any earthly submarine. Its surface rippled and pulsed with life, more reminiscent of a living creature than a ship. Inside this remarkable craft, Commander Hannah stood at her observation post, her sleek otter-like form illuminated by the soft bioluminescent glow that lined the ship's organic walls. Her whiskers twitched as she studied the massive metal shape that floated far above them. It was unlike anything the Aquarians had encountered in their centuries of space exploration. The vessel above was crude by their standards, all sharp angles and welded metal, yet it moved with purpose through their domain. "Commander, I'm picking up unusual energy readings," said Navigator Day, his fur patterns shifting from a calm blue to an excited purple. He moved his webbed hands across the living control interface, which responded to his touch with gentle pulses of light. The construct is definitely artificial, but the power source, it's primitive yet somehow efficient. The bridge crew, all looking like a cross between Earth's otters and seals, worked at their stations with practiced ease. Their fur patterns created a dancing light show as they communicated both verbally and through their species' natural bioluminescence. Each member of the crew had been carefully chosen for this mission, the first detailed exploration of Earth's oceans. Hannah swam closer to the main viewing membrane, a transparent section of the ship's living tissue that offered a clear view of the outside world. "What's the composition analysis?" Science Officer Quan, his whiskers adorned with small metallic bands, denoting his academic achievements, consulted his readings. "The vessel appears to be primarily steel and aluminum. They're using nuclear power. Fascinating that they've managed to harness atomic energy at such an early stage of development." The Wavelord itself was a marvel of Aquarian bioengineering. Unlike the human vessels, it had been grown rather than built, cultivated from specially engineered deep-sea organisms over many years. Its walls were alive, maintaining their own temperature and repairing damage automatically. The ship could even feed itself, filtering nutrients from the seawater around it. "Look at their propulsion system," pointed out Engineer Sun, her fur patterns showing intrigue. "They're using mechanical propellers. How wonderfully simple, yet they manage to move such massive structures through the water." A school of earth fish scattered as the Wavelord adjusted its position, maintaining a safe distance from the human vessel above. The ship's living hull automatically adjusted its coloration to match the surrounding waters, making it nearly invisible to both electronic and visual detection. "Another vessel approaching from the north," reported Day, his whiskers quivering with excitement. "Similar construction to the first one. They appear to be coordinating their movements." Commander Hannah watched as the two human ships began what looked like a practiced maneuver. Despite their seemingly crude construction, there was an undeniable elegance to their movements. These surface dwellers clearly knew what they were doing, even if their methods were different from the Aquarians. "Record everything," Hannah ordered, her tail moving in slow, thoughtful patterns. "The High Council will want detailed information about their technological level. And maintain our stealth protocols. We're not ready for direct contact yet." The crew worked in focused silence, documenting every aspect of the human vessels they could observe. Their own ship's advanced sensors captured everything from hull composition to crew movements inside the metal vessels. Each piece of data added to their growing understanding of this remarkable species that had evolved on land, yet dared to venture into the depths. "Commander," called out Sensor Operator Min, her fur patterns showing sudden alarm. "I'm detecting rapid pressure changes in the area. There appears to be significant seismic activity building up." Hannah's whiskers stiffened. They all knew how dangerous underwater earthquakes could be, even for their advanced vessels. But the human ships above them weren't designed for such stresses. They were about to witness firsthand how these surface dwellers handled a crisis in the deep. "Alert status," Hannah commanded, her fur patterns shifting to emergency configurations. "Prepare to observe their emergency protocols. This may be our first real insight into how they handle the ocean's true power. The water around them began to vibrate as the seabed far below shifted ominously. The human vessels above had clearly detected the danger too, their previously orderly movements becoming more urgent. The Aquarian crew watched with professional interest, about to learn far more about human capabilities than they had planned. 3 days after their initial discovery of the human vessels, the Wavelord's crew found something even more intriguing. Hidden away at a depth of 2,000 meters was a solitary research station, barely visible against the dark ocean floor. What caught their attention wasn't the station itself, but its sole occupant. Dr. Han worked alone in the small station, separated from the crushing depths by mere meters of reinforced walls and advanced transparent materials. The Aquarians watched through their sophisticated monitoring systems as she went about her daily routine with practiced ease, showing no sign of the fear they expected from a surface dweller at such depths. "Look at how she handles those samples," Science Officer Joy observed, his fur patterns flickering with intense interest. He adjusted the viewing membrane to zoom in on Dr. Han's careful movements as she collected data from various marine specimens. Such precision, even with those artificial manipulators. The human's diving suit was particularly fascinating to the Aquarian observers. Unlike their natural adaptations to deep-sea life, Dr. Han relied on a complex system of technology to survive. Her suit regulated pressure, provided oxygen, and maintained her body temperature, all functions the Aquarians handle through biology. "She's going out again," announced Sensor Operator Min, as their instruments detected the airlock cycling. This would be the 3rd time they had witnessed Dr. Han venture outside her station in the past day. The crew watched in amazement as Dr. Han moved through the water with unexpected grace. Despite the bulky appearance of her diving suit, she navigated the dark waters with confidence, using small thrusters to maneuver between rock formations and coral structures. "Notice how she approaches the marine life," Commander Hannah pointed out. "She maintains safe distances, disturbs nothing unnecessarily. This isn't just research. She respects this environment." They observed as Dr. Han carefully collected water samples and placed small monitoring devices on the seafloor. Each of her movements was deliberate, planned to minimize impact on the surrounding ecosystem. She even took time to gently redirect a curious fish that got too close to her equipment. "Their technology is remarkable in its own way," Engineer Sun commented, studying the readouts from Dr. Han's equipment. "Less advanced than ours, certainly, but they found clever solutions to deep-sea survival. Look at how they've handled the pressure problem. Simple physics, but effectively applied." The human researcher spent several hours outside, methodically documenting everything she encountered. The Aquarians were particularly impressed by her reaction when she discovered a new species of deep-sea creature. Instead of immediately collecting it, she spent time observing and recording its behavior, showing a level of scientific restraint they hadn't expected. "These surface dwellers continue to surprise me," Jai admitted, his fur patterns showing deep thought. "We assumed they would be clumsy conquerors, yet here's evidence of a more nuanced approach. She's not trying to dominate the environment. She's trying to understand it." As they watched, Dr. Han encountered a trapped fish, tangled in some human debris that had sunk to these depths. Without hesitation, she stopped her research to carefully free the creature. The Aquarians noted how she took time to collect the debris afterward, storing it in a special container on her suit. Environmental consciousness, Hannah mused, her whiskers twitching thoughtfully. "They're not just exploring, they're taking responsibility for their impact." The most fascinating moments came when Dr. Han returned to her station. They watched through their sensors as she meticulously documented everything she had observed, speaking detailed notes into her computer system. Her dedication to accurate record-keeping rivaled their own exacting standards. "Commander," Jai spoke up, his fur patterns showing excitement, "I believe we should reconsider our initial assessment of human scientific capabilities. While their technology may be less advanced, their methodology shows surprising sophistication." Hannah agreed, watching as Dr. Han began analyzing her collected samples. The human worked late into her day cycle, showing no sign of fatigue despite the challenging environment. It was clear that this wasn't just a job for her. It was a passion. "Continue monitoring," Hannah ordered, "but adjust our stealth patterns. She's more observant than we initially assumed. We don't want to risk detection before we're ready for contact." The Aquarian crew settled in for another night of observation, their preconceptions about surface-dwelling species slowly being challenged by this solitary human researcher who had made her temporary home in the depths of their domain. They were beginning to understand that humanity's relationship with the ocean was more complex than they had imagined. The first tremor came without warning. Deep beneath the ocean floor, tectonic plates shifted, sending shockwaves through the water. The Wavelord sensors detected the disturbance instantly, setting off a cascade of alarming readings across their monitoring stations. "Seismic activity," called out Navigator De, his fur patterns flashing urgent red and orange. "Multiple fault lines activating. This isn't a minor event." The crew watched in growing horror as the seafloor began to buckle and shift. Dr. Han's research station, anchored to the ocean floor, took the full force of the initial shock. The metal structure groaned under the sudden stress, its support beams straining against forces they were never designed to withstand. "Structural integrity of the human station is failing," reported Engineer Sun, her webbed hands flying across the living control interface. "The pressure seals are holding, but there are stress fractures forming in the main viewport." Through their monitoring devices, they could see Dr. Han rushing to her equipment, trying to secure vital research materials as her station shook around her. She moved with remarkable calm despite the danger, but the Aquarians could see she was fighting a losing battle. Another tremor rocked the seabed. This one was stronger, sending clouds of sediment billowing up from the ocean floor. Inside the station, alarms began blaring as the hairline cracks in the viewport began to spread like spider webs across the transparent surface. "Commander," Day's voice was urgent, his fur patterns now pulsing with intense concern. "The station's foundation is compromising. At this depth, if those cracks spread..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. They all knew what would happen if the station's hull failed at this depth. Commander Hannah watched as Dr. Han activated her emergency beacon, the signal piercing through the dark waters. But they could see from their readings that no human vessels were close enough to reach her in time. "We must intervene," Dai insisted, his patterns now showing pure distress. "She'll die if we don't act." Hannah felt the weight of centuries of first contact protocols pressing against her decision. Their civilization had strict rules about revealing themselves to developing species. But as she watched Dr. Han fighting to survive, she remembered the researchers' gentle treatment of ocean life, her careful study of their shared environment. Another violent shake rocked the station. A support beam groaned and buckled, sending sparks flying from damaged electrical systems. Through their sensors, they could see Dr. Han struggling to reach her emergency suit as parts of the ceiling began to cave in. "First contact protocols are superseded by immediate threat to sentient life," Hannah announced, her fur patterns shifting to command configuration. "Move in. Full emergency response. Prepare the atmospheric chamber and medical bay." The Wavelord's living hull pulsed with activity as the ship surged forward, finally dropping its camouflage. The organic vessel's true form would be visible to human eyes for the first time. A sleek, bioluminescent shape moving through the water with incredible speed. "Engineering, prepare the emergency seal," Hannah ordered. "Medical team, stand by. Navigation, bring us alongside the station's emergency airlock. We'll need a perfect seal on the first try." The crew moved with practiced efficiency, despite the unprecedented nature of their actions. The Wavelord's living tissue extended, forming a secure connection to the human station's airlock, just as another tremor threatened to tear the structure apart. "Life support levels in the station are critical," reported Science Officer J. "The main oxygen system is failing." Through the viewing membrane, they could see Dr. Han staring in astonishment at their ship, her eyes wide as she took in the impossible sight of their biological vessel. But she didn't freeze. Even in her shock, she maintained enough presence of mind to begin sealing vital research samples in waterproof containers. "Begin emergency extraction," Commander Hannah ordered, her tail swishing with determination. "Send the contact signal through the airlock systems. Let's hope she understands basic pressure physics enough to trust us." As the Wavelord's emergency systems engage, Hannah watched the human researcher and made a silent promise. Whatever consequences came from this breach of protocol, they would face them knowing they had preserved not just a life, but perhaps humanity's first step toward a greater understanding of the oceans they all call home. The station groaned again, more ominously this time. They were out of time for careful deliberation. The moment of first contact between humanity and the Aquarian collective was about to happen in the worst possible circumstances, but perhaps, Hannah thought, also the most meaningful ones. In the Wavelord's atmospheric chamber, Dr. Han sat surrounded by her alien rescuers, her wet hair still dripping from the emergency evacuation. Instead of panic or fear, her face showed pure fascination as she studied the organic walls that pulsed with gentle bioluminescence. The Aquarians had created a comfortable environment for her, adjusting the chamber's temperature and humidity to human-suitable levels. "This entire ship is alive?" she asked, reaching out to touch the wall nearest to her. The living tissue responded to her touch with a soft glow, causing her to break into a delighted smile. The way it adapts and responds, it's incredible. Commander Hannah watched the human with growing respect. Most species, when faced with first contact in such dramatic circumstances, responded with fear or aggression. Yet here was Dr. Han, already asking detailed scientific questions about their biotechnology. "Your civilization evolved underwater," Dr. Han continued, her eyes sparkling with curiosity as she observed the otter-like features of her rescuers. "The similarities to Earth's marine mammals are fascinating. Convergent evolution on a galactic scale." The Aquarian crew exchanged glances, their fur patterns showing pleasant surprise at her scientific understanding. Commander Hannah nodded, her whiskers twitching with amusement. "As yours evolved on land. Yet here you are, exploring the depths. Most surface species never venture this far down." Science Officer G moved closer, his fur patterns showing intense interest as he examined the diving suit Dr. Han had been wearing. "Your environmental suit. It's remarkably efficient for its technological level. How did you develop this?" Dr. Han launched into an explanation of human diving technology, starting from the earliest diving bells to modern deep-sea suits. The Aquarians listened intently, their fur patterns shifting with each new piece of information. They were particularly impressed by humanity's rapid progression from basic ocean exploration to sophisticated deep-sea research. "Humans are curious by nature," Dr. Han explained, gesturing enthusiastically. "We adapt to explore. When we can't breathe underwater, we build machines to help us. When the pressure is too great, we design suits to protect us. Every obstacle becomes a puzzle to solve." Engineer Sun couldn't contain her curiosity any longer. "But why risk your life in these depths? Your species clearly isn't built for this environment." Dr. Han's answer surprised them all. "Because it's there," she said simply. "Because every time we dive deeper, we learn something new. The ocean covers most of our planet, but we've explored less of it than we have of our moon. How could we not be curious about what lies in our own backyard?" The concept of exploring purely for knowledge's sake resonated deeply with the Aquarian crew. Their own society placed high value on scientific discovery, but they had always assumed surface-dwelling species would be more focused on exploitation than exploration. "Tell us about your research," Commander Hannah encouraged, genuinely interested in understanding this human's perspective on their shared environment. For the next hour, Dr. Han shared her findings about deep-sea ecosystems, her theories about marine biology, and her concerns about ocean conservation. The Aquarians were impressed by how much humans had learned despite their technological limitations. "Your species seems to have a complex relationship with the ocean," Navigator Dai observed, noting how Dr. Han's expression shifted when discussing environmental challenges. "We haven't always been good stewards," Dr. Han admitted honestly. "But we're learning. More humans are beginning to understand that the ocean's health is connected to our own survival. That's part of why I'm down here, to help build that understanding." The conversation flowed naturally between topics, from marine biology to space exploration, from technology to philosophy. The Aquarians found themselves repeatedly surprised by the depth of human knowledge and their drive to understand the universe around them. "Perhaps," Commander Hannah suggested, her fur patterns showing thoughtful consideration, "this unexpected meeting is an opportunity for both our species. We have much we could learn from each other." Dr. Han nodded enthusiastically, already pulling out her waterproof notebook to jot down questions. "The potential for scientific collaboration is enormous. Your understanding of deep-sea ecosystems, combined with our different perspectives, imagine what we could discover together." The crew watched with amusement as their human guest began sketching their biotechnology, asking detailed questions about how their ship's living systems worked. Her enthusiasm was infectious, making even the most reserved crew members eager to share their knowledge. In that moment, watching Dr. Han interact with his crew, Commander Hannah realized that this accidental first contact might turn out to be the most fortunate accident in both their species' histories. Sometimes, the best discoveries happen not through careful planning, but through unexpected circumstances and shared curiosity. The peaceful scientific discussions aboard the Wavelord were suddenly interrupted by the sharp wail of emergency sensors. The living ship's walls pulsed with urgent red patterns as alert signals spread through its neural network. "Underwater landslide detected," Navigator Day announced, his fur patterns flashing with alarm. "Large displacement of sediment and rock approximately 2 kilometers from our position." Commander Hannah quickly moved to the main viewing membrane, where the ship's sensors painted a grim picture. A human research submarine had been caught in the aftermath of their earlier seismic event. The vessel was now partially buried under tons of displaced seafloor material. "They're trapped," Dr. Han said, her face paling as she studied the sensor readings. Without hesitation, she moved toward her salvaged diving equipment. "I have to help them." Science Officer G's fur patterns showed immediate concern. "That's far too dangerous. The area is still unstable, and your equipment was stressed during the earlier rescue." "They're my people," Dr. Han responded simply, already checking her oxygen levels. "Wouldn't you do the same for your crew?" The Aquarians watched as she efficiently inspected her diving suit, her movements quick but thorough. There was no hesitation in her actions, no sign of fear despite the obvious dangers. "The submarine's hull is intact," reported Engineer Sun, monitoring the detailed scans. "But their propulsion system appears damaged. They can't free themselves." Commander Hannah's whiskers twitched as she made a quick decision. "We'll assist. But Dr. Han, you must follow our safety protocols. Our ship can handle these conditions better than your suit." The human researcher nodded, accepting the commander's authority while continuing her preparations. The Wavelord's crew quickly organized into emergency response teams, their fur patterns synchronized in focused patterns of blue and green. As they approached the accident site, they could see the submarine's emergency lights piercing through the murky water. The vessel was trapped at an angle, its rear section buried under a massive pile of rocks and sediment. "Their oxygen recycling system is still functioning," Jai reported, "but their power reserves are dropping. We have perhaps 2 hours before the situation becomes critical." Dr. Han stood by the airlock, her diving suit sealed, and checked. "I can communicate with them, explain what's happening. They need to know they're not alone down here." The Aquarians had to admire her courage. Even with their natural adaptations to deep-sea conditions, such rescue operations were dangerous. For a surface dweller to volunteer first was unexpected. "We'll extend the ship's protective field around you," Commander Hannah said, her tail moving in decisive patterns. "Engineer Sun, prepare the biomechanical assists. We'll need them to move that debris." The rescue operation began with precision. The Wavelord's living hull extended tendrils of bioluminescent tissue, creating a safe working space around the submarine. Dr. Han swam toward the vessel's forward viewport, where the crew's shocked faces were clearly visible as they saw both her and their unusual rescuers. "They're responding to standard emergency frequencies," Dr. Han reported through her comm system. "They understand we're here to help. Their main concern is the weight of the debris on their aft section." The Aquarian crew worked seamlessly with their human ally, using their ship's biological technology, in concert with Dr. Han's understanding of human vessel design. The Wavelord extended more specialized tendrils, these designed for heavy lifting, while Dr. Han guided their placement to avoid damaging the submarine's vulnerable points. "Careful," she warned as they began lifting the first boulder. Their hull wasn't designed for this kind of lateral stress. Hours passed as they methodically cleared the debris. Dr. Han moved between the submarine and the Wavelord, relaying messages and helping position equipment. Despite her obvious physical exhaustion, she never once suggested taking a break. Finally, with one last coordinated effort, they freed the submarine's propulsion system. The vessel's engines sputtered to life, and slowly it rose from its trapped position. Back aboard the Wavelord, Dr. Han collapsed into a seat, exhausted but smiling. "Thank you," she said simply, looking at each crew member. "You didn't have to help, but you did." Commander Hannah's fur patterns showed warm approval. "We just witnessed why humans have managed to survive in so many hostile environments. Your courage and determination are impressive." The submarine's crew had been clearly instructed not to discuss their unusual rescuers, but the Aquarians knew this encounter would have far-reaching consequences. They had just demonstrated to humanity that they weren't alone in the universe's oceans, and more importantly, that help could come from unexpected places. "You know," Dr. Han said thoughtfully, watching the submarine carefully navigate away, "this is exactly why we need each other. The oceans are vast and dangerous. We're better off facing those dangers together." After the rescue mission, the Wavelord's atmospheric chamber became a place of quiet reflection. The tired but satisfied crew gathered around Dr. Han, who was still drying off from her final dive. Through the living ship's viewing membrane, they watched the rescue submarine's lights fade as it made its slow ascent to the safety of the surface. "Your species is remarkable," Commander Hannah said, her fur patterns showing genuine admiration. "You weren't born to the seas, yet you venture here regardless. Most surface species we've encountered never leave their comfort zone." Dr. Han smiled, wrapping a thermal blanket around her shoulders. "Humans go everywhere we can," she explained, gesturing to the dark waters around them. "And sometimes places we probably shouldn't. It's just who we are. That's what makes you unique," Officer G added, his scientific curiosity evident in his glowing patterns. "You're not limited by your biology. You overcome it." The entire crew had gathered to discuss what they'd witnessed. Engineer Sun was still examining Dr. Han's diving equipment with fascination, amazed by the ingenious solutions humans had developed to survive in the deep. "Look at this," Sun said, holding up the regulator system. "They don't try to change their bodies to breathe water. They just bring their air with them. So simple, yet so effective." Dr. Han watched as the Aquarians studied her equipment. "We learn from nature," she explained. "We watched how whales and seals dive, how fish move through water, how deep-sea creatures handle pressure. Then we built tools to copy what works." Navigator Day moved closer, his fur patterns showing intense interest. "But the risks, surely your people must fear the depths. The darkness, the pressure, the isolation." "Of course we fear it," Dr. Han admitted honestly. "But fear doesn't stop us. If anything, it makes us more careful, more innovative. We plan, we prepare, we build better equipment. Then we go anyway." Commander Hannah's whiskers twitched thoughtfully. "Yet you also show remarkable restraint. We've observed your research methods. You could simply take what you want from the ocean, but instead you study, you document, you protect." We learned that lesson the hard way, Dr. Han said, her expression growing serious. Humans have made many mistakes with our oceans. We've overfished, polluted, destroyed habitats. But we're learning. More of us understand now that the sea isn't just a resource to exploit. It's a world to understand. The Aquarians exchanged glances, their fur patterns showing surprising patterns of respect. They had expected to find primitives blindly stumbling into the depths. Instead, they'd found a species capable of both daring and wisdom. Tell us more about your surface world, Jai requested, genuinely curious. How does a species evolve on land yet develop such a connection to the sea? Dr. Han spent the next hour sharing stories of human history, tales of the first sailors who ventured beyond sight of land, of pioneers who imagined machines to explore the depths, of researchers who dedicated their lives to understanding marine life. But what drives this need to explore? Dai asked, still trying to understand. Your species has comfortable cities, abundant resources on land. Why risk the unknown? Because it's there, Dr. Han repeated her earlier answer, but expanded on it. Every frontier we encounter is a challenge, a puzzle to solve. The ocean, space, the atomic world, they all call to us, asking to be understood. Commander Hannah watched her crew's reactions to Dr. Han's words. She could see them beginning to understand what made humans different from other species they'd encountered. It wasn't just their technology or their adaptability. It was their unique combination of curiosity, courage, and consciousness. You build machines to go where your bodies can't, Sun observed, still examining the diving equipment. You use technology not to dominate nature, but to experience it. Exactly, Dr. Han agreed. We don't want to conquer the ocean. We want to know it, to learn from it. That's why finding you here is so incredible. You can teach us so much about this world we share. The Wavelord's living walls pulsed with gentle patterns of light, as if the ship itself was participating in this moment of understanding between species. Commander Hannah realized that their accidental first contact had turned into something far more significant. A bridge between two very different approaches to life in the ocean. Perhaps, Hannah suggested, her fur pattern showing optimistic colors, this is the beginning of something greater than either of our species could achieve alone. In the quiet of her private chamber aboard the Wavelord, Commander Hannah began composing her report to the Aquarian High Council. The living walls around her pulsed with soft, calming patterns as she organized her thoughts about the remarkable events of the past few days. Her whiskers twitched thoughtfully as she activated the ship's organic recording system. High Council of the Aquarian Collective, she began, her fur patterns reflecting the formal nature of her report. I submit this account regarding our encounters with the species known as humans, specifically concerning our interactions with their scientist, Dr. Han. The recording membrane captured every detail as Hannah described their observations, from the initial discovery of human vessels to the dramatic rescue operations. She paid particular attention to documenting Dr. Han's scientific methods and ethical approach to deep-sea research. Despite their terrestrial origins, she wrote, her patterns showing passionate conviction, humans display remarkable adaptability, courage, and wisdom. They seek knowledge not for power, but for understanding. They risk their lives not for glory, but to help others. Throughout the ship, other crew members were preparing their own specialized reports. Science Officer G compiled detailed analyses of human technology, while Engineer Sun documented their innovative solutions to deep-sea survival. Navigator Day mapped out potential safe zones for future contact. Their approach to ocean exploration, Hannah continued, demonstrates a unique combination of daring and responsibility. While their technology may be less advanced than ours, their methods show remarkable sophistication and respect for marine environments. She described Dr. Han's rescue efforts, emphasizing how the human had put herself at risk to help others without hesitation. This willingness to aid others, even at personal cost, suggests a species capable of genuine altruism and cooperation. The ship's living walls rippled with anticipation as Hannah reached her conclusion. Based on these observations and experiences, I strongly recommend immediate diplomatic relations with humanity. Their potential as allies in understanding and protecting our shared oceans cannot be overstated. Meanwhile, in another section of the ship, Dr. Han was preparing for her return to the repaired research station. The Aquarian crew had worked tirelessly to restore it, even improving some of its systems with their biotechnological knowledge. "Your council might take time to decide," Dr. Han said to Commander Hannah as they walked through the ship's organic corridors. "My people aren't always quick to embrace new ideas." Hannah's fur patterns showed gentle amusement. "You might be surprised. Sometimes the most important decisions are the easiest to make." As if in response to her words, the ship's communication system pulsed with an incoming message. The High Council's response had arrived with unexpected speed. The entire crew gathered as Commander Hannah opened the message. The Council's answer was remarkably brief. "Proceed." That single word carried enormous weight. It represented not just approval, but trust in Hannah's judgment, and more importantly, trust in humanity's potential. "It seems," Dr. Han said with a smile, "both our species can move quickly when it matters." As they stood in the ship's observation chamber, watching the dark waters swirl around them, Commander Hannah and Dr. Han shared a moment of profound understanding. Here were two species, evolved in completely different environments, yet finding common ground in their shared love of exploration and discovery. "This," Hannah thought, her fur patterns showing bright optimism, "is how greater things begin." The Wavelord's walls pulsed with gentle light, as if the ship itself was celebrating this historic moment. Around them, the crew began preparing for the next phase of their mission, the careful process of introducing two vastly different civilizations. "Your people will have many questions," Hannah said to Dr. Han. "As will mine." "Questions are good," Dr. Han replied, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Questions are how we learn, how we grow. And now we can learn from each other." As Dr. Han gathered her equipment and prepared to return to her station, both she and Commander Hannah knew that they had witnessed the beginning of something extraordinary. In the depths of Earth's oceans, two species had found not just each other, but a shared vision for the future. The stars above the ocean's surface might still be out of reach for humanity, but the depths had given them their first bridge to a larger universe. And it had all started with curiosity, courage, and the simple desire to understand the worlds around them. "End report," Commander Hannah said softly, her fur patterns showing quiet satisfaction. The living walls of the Wavelord dimmed slightly, as if settling in for the next chapter of this remarkable story.